Hey, friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Ask WrestleJuice. You guys left a bunch of great questions. Let's go ahead and get started. First up, from the Wrestling Pro. Says, what do you think the real reason is William Regal left AEW? Wow, Wrestling Pro, thanks. Because now I can title this video, Real Reason William Regal left AEW. It's been a while since I've been able to do that. Before we get started, hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that notify bell. So the real reason William Regal left AEW. So I'll say this. Every once in a while in wrestling, there will come a story that gets out that two sides of that story want to sort of control the perception, the narrative, if you will. And speaking of control your narrative, EC3 piped up a couple days ago and had some things to say about Regal leaving. Sort of most noteworthy is that Regal sort of immediately regretted signing with AEW. In fact, EC3 used the word verbatim, which means those are exactly Regal's words. Now, I have no idea if EC3 actually spoke to William Regal and William Regal said those exact words, because I'm not privy to conversations between EC3 and William Regal. However, the assertion that William Regal would conduct sort of seminars on the days of tapings, and people were sort of either expected to or invited to come down and learn from the William Regal wisdom tree. And a lot of people just didn't do that. And people were not listening to Regal and what his experience sort of taught him. And this is a guy who's coming from only a year ago, an NXT situation where he was basically tasked with doing that for a living, with teaching the next generation of WWE superstars, sports entertainers, what he believes is the right way to pro wrestle and the wrong way to pro wrestle. So EC3 put this out there, and then the very next day, today, it was refuted. There was an article from SC Scoops where there's like sort of, I guess, people who want to say, no, that's bullshit. And it's like AEW sources. So AEW people are coming out to support AEW in light of this story making them look bad. And the thing about this is nothing that these sources actually said refuted what EC3 had to say. These sources said, and I got the little quotes here, it said there was never some schedule you had to be down at the ring and people blew it off, and Regal was never going to flat tell somebody they had to come to the ring so he could coach them. Now, that was never actually claimed by EC3. This person, whoever these sources are, claimed that EC3 is just upset that AEW never signed EC3. By the way, it kind of wouldn't shock me if EC3 ended up back in WWE under Triple H, because Triple H brought him into NXT in the first place. And I feel like maybe, I don't know, they'd get along. So anyways, yeah, it feels like there's sort of the EC3 side of this story, which is Regal didn't like AEW. And then there's another side of it that's like, that never happened. But it's not really saying anything different, and it's not really addressing how William Regal felt. Only William Regal and those close to him probably know exactly why he left AEW, but it seems clear from this story that seems to be corroborated by all these sources, plus Brian Pillman Jr. spoke on Twitter as well, said that, yeah, not everybody would show up, but they'd always have a pretty good audience, Regal and Danielson, for people who wanted to learn. It seems like that aspect of it, and I don't have any real sources here, so if you think that the title and thumbnail, this is misleading, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to extrapolate from what we have, which is plenty of information, and use some common sense here. It seems like the teaching aspect of being in wrestling is something that Regal really appreciates. He has said that many times on his podcast also. That is something that he wants to do. And maybe that's something that he believed he was going to do more of in AEW. And it turns out that in AEW, because it lacks that formal structure that NXT has, he wasn't satisfied with walking Jon Moxley out to the ring or doing a promo here and there, or any of the other performance aspects of wrestling. He's more interested in teaching. If he liked coming down to the ring and managing, he'd probably still be in AEW because he was able to manage MJF. That was probably a story they would have picked up if he wasn't going to leave. He probably would have continued to go with MJF, or certainly been planned within the stories there in AEW more than just being written off by being hit with a pair of brass knucks by MJF. So it seems kind of obvious then that the real reason William Regal left AEW, because he wanted to do a certain thing, and that certain thing wasn't there for him to do to the degree that he wants to do it. He's always been close with Triple H. Seems like a no-brainer for him to either get out of his contract or let it expire or whatever, and then head back over to Orlando where he can resume teaching the people there in NXT. That seems like a natural conclusion to come from. So you want the real reason why he left AEW? It's been in all these reports. Now, at some point, maybe Regal will speak on that on his podcast, and then we'll get the super real reason why William Regal's no longer in AEW. That's my guess. So anyways, that was a good question. Oh, thanks, Wrestling Pro. I like your avatar. Next. Let's see here. Peyton Brand says, who do you think is going to dethrone Gunther of his IC title? I think it's possible it's Ricochet this week. Isn't it this week? I think it's this week. I think that's a possibility. I don't think it's a certainty, but I think it's a possibility. If it's not him, he's got Braun Strowman up next. It's not going to be Braun Strowman. So at that point, I don't know who it would be. I think Gunther's a terrific upper mid-card Intercontinental Championship, that he's been making that championship mean something. So that's why I'm sort of like, I don't know, 70-30 that Ricochet's not going to take that title off Gunther. As far as who it will be, I mean, you got to look at SmackDown. I don't know. I don't think it'd be LA Knight, although LA Knight has had a tendency of getting himself wildly over. I just don't think that this feud right now with Bray Wyatt is the thing to do it, because he just keeps on getting beat up all the time. It's not going to be Bray Wyatt, because if he gets a title, it's going to be the big one. Yeah, I don't know who else it could be. I mean, you're over there on SmackDown. They could circle around back to Sheamus, but that's kind of uninspired. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anybody obvious right now is going to take it off Gunther. Maybe they'll wait till WrestleMania, or maybe they'll even wait till after the next draft and shake things up a little bit. And then you'll have, like, I don't know, a Seth Rollins over on SmackDown or an Austin Theory over on SmackDown. But yeah, maybe a Karrion Kross, but then who's going to be a good guy? Who's going to be a bad guy? So I don't think that's going to happen either. Drew McIntyre has already been a world champion. Nobody. It's going to be nobody. There's literally nobody that can take that title off Gunther, because nobody makes any sense. Isaac B. So he's going to have it until WWE ends, which is going to be in, I don't know, never. With the Royal Rumble rapidly approaching next month, we've already seen Kofi declared for the main match. Now, the main issues I had with this year's Royal Rumble, of which there are quite a few, is that they announced somewhere around 26 entrants beforehand. I feel this takes away much of the anticipation for the Rumble, as there are less possibilities. You think Triple H is going to make the same mistake? So the idea is, do we think that they're going to announce like everybody and there's going to be no surprises? My guess is they'll announce 20 people, and 10 of them will be surprises, legends, and NXT call-ups. That's my guess. 20 people. Tyler Warden says, with the announcement of the Iron Survivor match, what a clusterfuck that looks to be. He says, do you think there's any gas in the tank for WWE to have a new wave of good gimmick matches introduced? If this is any indication, probably not. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, everything's been done. It's just sort of doing, like, freshening up new thing or old things. I think, you know, they brought back War Games for Survivor Series. This Iron Survivor is kind of a mess, but there's other gimmick matches they could just sort of rip off. I mean, this has kind of got like what King of the Mountain feel to it, or what the Championship Scramble or whatever it is. So they could steal from other promotions, but I don't know. I feel like just stick with what you got and make that stuff really good. That's the way to go. I Like Movies says, if Rock doesn't come back, but Cody doesn't win the Rumble, do you think people will boo him because he's not Sami Zayn? And he says like a Batista Daniel Bryan situation, which is actually a pretty good parallel. The only problem is I don't know that anybody was really aching for Batista to return. That was 2014. I don't know that it's not like he left on like a big triumphant note and everybody was like really eagerly anticipating his debut. And also so I'll say this. I don't think anybody's going to boo Cody. But if everybody is expecting Sami Zayn to show up and it seems like a natural part of the story that just makes sense because he's white hot, and instead that doesn't happen and he's nowhere to be found. Yes, they will have to explain why Sammy's not in the Rumble. They'll have to explain why people should not, or they'll have to write something to make sure people don't expect him to show up in the Rumble and then win it. Because if he keeps up this momentum and the bloodline ends up jumping him out of the bloodline, people might want that to happen. So you're going to have to explain why that's not going to happen. Good question, though. Average Oak Tree. What's your go-to pizza toppings? Meat. Meat and mushrooms. He says, what do you stay away from? Pineapple. I don't do that. Shayer Mohan says, could we see qualifying matches for the Rumble make a comeback? That's a great idea. I don't know, but I think that's a great idea. I think they should do that. Jason Sky says, feel like Asuka joining the Judgment Day would be a nice change to her character. Says, I feel like she's always done the same thing since being brought up. If she lost the multicolored gear and just wore black and became a killer, she'd feel like a bigger threat again. And a tag team with Rhea could be dominant. So, I like sort of halfway where you're going with that, Jason Sky. I think that Asuka is probably very shortly going to get a rebrand on her character because Rhea Ripley just beat the shit out of her on Raw, which you probably... No, you wrote this an hour ago, so you saw Raw. And I don't think that's going to happen. However, I do think to counter Rhea, they're going to write Asuka off for a second and then bring her back as like a darker, more violent version of her character. Because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. She's sort of stale, and even commentary has said Asuka is going to, she's been in the past one of the most feared roster members, and that's not the case anymore. She lost that match, then Rhea beat the shit out of her. So I do think that'd be a great idea for them to rebrand Asuka as sort of a darker, more violent version of her character, similar to what we saw before she showed up in NXT. And I think that's a distinct possibility. I really do. Richard Ives, what do you think WWE should do with OMOS? Should it be released? No. Pushed or put in developmental? I don't know. He says things don't seem to be working out for him. He's very limited in what he can do in the ring. And I don't know what you do with a guy who's really limited with what you can do in the ring. Here's my idea with OMOS, and I don't know where it would go long term. You reform the Hurt Business, which they desperately need to do, and you add OMOS to it. Same guys as before. You add OMOS as sort of your big heater guy, and I think that would work out great because you're still learning from all those guys, and he still has a high profile. And then I don't know what the end result is. I don't know what you do with him in the end. If that's just his career as being big heater guy, and he doesn't really go anywhere with it, then maybe that's just his career. Maybe he can do that for 10 years. Lick says, who had a better 2022, Sami Zayn or MJF? It's Sami Zayn. He's part of the most interesting story in wrestling. He's currently performing at a high level. MJF has had a great 2022. Don't get me wrong. He was gone for a big chunk of it. He was sort of blamed for Wardlow's woes out of, what was it, Double or Nothing. And yeah, now he's champion with sort of an ugly looking title. And yeah, but no, I think it's Sami Zayn, highest profile, biggest storyline, and everybody wants to see him take those titles off Roman, which I still don't think is going to happen, but fuck, I don't know. Andrew says, if William Regal does return to WWE, do you think he's going to be next GM again for NXT or some other role? Yeah, if he shows up, I think he'll be NXT GM. I think that's a possibility. Although they already have Shawn Michaels there, so I don't know. Maybe he won't be on TV. I don't know. Maybe they'll have him manage somebody on screen. That'd be kind of cool. Not a lot of managers in NXT except for what's-his-face, Robert Stone. Wildest Legend. Who should realistically dethrone Roman? Cody or The Rock? Probably Cody, right? Cody or Kevin Owens? Probably Cody. Darius Corey, what is AEW missing that WWE has? And vice versa. WWE is missing the variety of matches that AEW puts on. I feel like WWE's match quality has gone up significantly since Triple H has come in, simply because it gives them more time to breathe. But AEW, by bringing in such a wide variety of independent wrestlers, you get a wider variety of matches. So that's what WWE is missing. AEW's missing longer term storylines. Yeah, I was really disappointed with what they did with Daniel Garcia. They had a really good storyline with him and Jericho and Bryan, and then he just went back to Jericho Appreciation Society, and they did nothing with it. I feel like if that was under Triple H, it would have been a much more compelling story, and Daniel Garcia would have been much more interesting after his story. And that's sort of indicative of the difference between AEW and WWE, is that AEW has a much more freewheeling approach to storytelling, and oftentimes it doesn't pay off in the long term. For WWE, at least they try. I'm not going to say they succeed much, but it's only been, 4 months since Triple H has got there. And I do think that he's setting up a lot of stuff that's supposed to pay off down the line. I think we'll see that over the next year or so. Let's see here. Jason Allenby says, as we near the end of the year, what would you say are some of the biggest WTF booking decisions? He asked for one WWE, one AEW, one wild card. He'd say Bayley not winning Extreme Rules, Wardlow's booking after Double or Nothing, and Tyrus winning the NWA Heavyweight Championship. So being a big Impact fan, I'll give you my wild card first, and that's having Bully Ray anchor the A story on Impact right now, winning the Call Your Shot gauntlet, and then challenging Josh Alexander, I think has been kind of not great, because Josh Alexander should be able to wipe the floor with Bully Ray in no time flat. So yeah, Bully being the centerpiece of Impact is not to my liking. And it's sort of a what the fuck moment. As far as AEW is concerned, I'd say putting the Punk Mox match before, like a week before Double or Nothing, was a bad move. I think that was stupid. No, I'm sorry, before All Out. Before All Out. That was dumb, and they shouldn't have done that. I'd also suggest that the whole booking of Hangman and Punk, where Hangman lost the title, and seemingly they had no story. Tony Khan just said, go out there and do whatever, and then it turned into what it turned into, where Hangman Page was like, oh, Punk, I'm going to destroy you. And it's like, what? Why is he acting weird? There needs to be more storytelling in AEW. And then in WWE, biggest WTF booking decision, I'll just try during the Triple H era, putting JBL with Baron Corbin, where JBL just gets on the microphone and talks endlessly. Like they're seeing that did not work, and so they've turned into a comedy act backstage playing poker, which I'm actually fine with, because I'm kind of entertained by that stuff. Another wild card is Ric Flair's last match. Just that entire last match, that whole thing, everything about that. Who's this? One last one. Fazzy Wazzy, is there anything in wrestling that shouldn't bother you, but it does? Yeah, when wrestlers look up at the ref when the ref is counting and they kick out. I don't like that. I know you're going to kick out. Johnny Burney. Well, this is the last one. What happened to Rampage? We were promised a third hour Dynamite. Now we're getting a second hour Dark Elevation. I mean, nobody watches Rampage. Sometimes I think aren't the numbers like worse than some of the Dark and Elevation shows? Yeah, I don't know. I think that they're in a really bad time slot. They probably should have. I know that he wanted to do TNT because he wanted a show on TNT, but that's kind of stupid. Honestly, what they should do in the new year is put Rampage on a different Warner Discovery channel, like Travel Channel or True TV, and put it on at Thursdays in the Impact slot. Impact will move. They don't care. Yeah, you just put it to a different night and at a different time, because then it's like, okay, you're going to keep on getting bumped regardless if you're on TNT, because TNT has all that sports stuff. So you're going to keep on getting bumped. Friday night is an awful, awful time slot. You want to move away from that and put it on a channel that other people watch. People watch Travel Channel. People watch True TV. Put it there. Put it at a decent time slot. People need to watch that show. I'm going to finish my tea. Thanks, everybody, for the questions. I appreciate it. And until next time, check out this video right here. But be very quiet about it, because my cat's trying to sleep.